You don't think that music's getting old?
Hell no. I love that.
Really?
I really do. Shut up, Tad.
Remember what we went through to find that?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Remember the day we played some music from Tad's arsenal, and we still
you got it from that, didn't you?
that episode's still not up. We got banged. Hey, we're powering speed. I'm choking. 908-751-0211.
Like some Facebook and iTunes, and hey, people have been calling in, so
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, they'll be calling in, and I'm just waiting for Tom to realize that his audio's on his telephone again. But that's okay.
It can't be.
Would you like to hold that up to the microphone so everybody realizes that?
Go.
How come I'm the only one that hears this?
I don't know. I didn't hear it.
I heard it. You just see now. Is this what you were talking about when you were going to ride my fucking?
Oh, I knew.
evening?
I knew it'd come back. Your phone's on constantly too, buzzing and yelping and all kind of nonsense.
Because I'm a very important person.
You're
with
not
a lot of business going
in
on.
your world.
Lots of business.
yes,
Impotent.
impotent.
Yeah.
Yes,
Might be.
So
what
tonight we're gonna have Wild Bill come back.
Yeah,
I spoke with Wild Bill. When was it? Thursday.
Yep.
And started talking about turbochargers and got thoroughly confused and said, "Okay, stop right there."
Yep.
Because this whole conversation of trying to make me understand the ins and outs and the whys you would do things should happen on here. So I did a lot of learning this week on this whole project because there's a lot of things I didn't know. Spoke to people about camshafts.
You noticed how interested I was over the weekend, right?
Yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah.
I did notice that.
Did I even answer anything that you said?
No.
Yeah.
No, not all weekend. That's duly noted. Don't worry.
I know. Well, dude, you don't talk about cars all week.
The minute
you talk about Dune players, I'm going to call you fucking Saturday we'll try to have a Dune player conversation.
The minute that we sign the Sirius XM contract, I am going to make sure that those percentages are adjusted. Trust me, that'll be the day.
Just remember, I have way more accurate guns than you do.
Yeah. So, but it was I learned some from Bill about turbocharger selection because I want to point out to everybody that when we talk about this stuff, I don't know this stuff. I never did it, never had exposure to it.
Tad knows it.
Yeah, Todd knows it.
So that's all
right. I have what I would like to consider a fairly wide-ranging view of camshafts and why they work.
That is one of your specialties.
But how to apply that to turbocharging, no clue. And I remember all the stupid things in the past I heard, like big intake lobe, small exhaust lobe, 126 separations, all this crazy stuff. And they were probably like, the guys that I'm thinking about one particular guy, but I'm not going to mention his name. All those kind of weirdos that had these outlandish ideas and, they were wrong.
Well, it was snake oil, though. They probably made money at it.
Yeah, they had to have this turbo cam or that turbo cam.
Yep.
Here's what I found. That pretty much like if you were looking to get the best of, every last little horsepower you can get, yes, camshaft principles kind of hold true to what I know. Speed, rocker, valve intensity. But in the end, this is like the conversation with Anthony in the piston race. If you pick up the right camshaft and you've now, I don't know, increased your horsepower footprint. Let's say you had a real good cam and normally aspirated, the thing would make 20 more horsepower. Okay, maybe it turns up to be 20 something more in the turbocharged land. It doesn't.
Why wouldn't it?
Well, but see, this is where you start to think about it. Because we know turbocharging adds an atmosphere or, adds pressure or two or three or whatever you can handle. You would say that, well, if you could make 400 as a base, and you could make 420 as a base, well, if you're going to make 3 times your horsepower, wouldn't you pick up 60? And the answer is no. And there's a good way that was explained. There's certain things you would do in a drag car because other things aren't configured for it. For instance, you got a nitrous car, nitrous torque converter. Try to run it on motor. It'll never run up to its potential on motor.
No, because it's tight as shit.
Because the nitrous makes the turbocharger work. Well,
converter.
The converter. You know what I mean. But thank you. See, this is going to be one of those days, huh? You're just going to, I had a bad day.
That wasn't even intentional. I was just correcting you for the audience.
Thank you. I'm sure they know what I meant.
My apologies.
we can get into that one too.
We will, yeah.
So what you're doing is the turbocharger. There's certain things you would do to optimize it, but by the same token, if you had a camshaft, or see, now you got me doing it now. If you had a camshaft that was optimized for nitrous and a whole setup for nitrous, you can go back to the torque converter.
Mm-hmm.
The converter was optimized for normally aspirated. You can't hit it with 300 and expect it to work.
Nope.
So you're while theoretically, yes, you should multiply your horsepower based on your base horsepower. That only holds true to a point. And from talking to some very good people that I have a lot of respect for, they pretty much told me everything that I thought was correct. Lots of ramp speed.
Sure.
But he said, how fast you trying to go? And doesn't matter. Is another guy next to you going a mile an hour faster and you got to have that mile an hour, then you got to start to look at this. And then when you get into the turbocharged camshafts, what happens? How well do they spool? How well did they behave?
What are the trade-offs for the other stuff that you're looking for?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And I mean, if you think about it, you think about sloppy Matt's stuff. He's
very sloppy.
Very sloppy. I mean, God, putting those piston rings in with a screwdriver.
Come on, man.
I think this has become a gag, hasn't it?
It's become a meme on Facebook on the
but
pages,
that does just a little bit of disservice to people that really don't know. To the 10 guys out of 100 that just don't know, and next thing you know, they're putting pistons in with a screwdriver in their garage.
Well, nobody could think that's right if you're putting. I mean, like maybe
you haven't spent time on Naziok, buddy. There's people that can think it's right.
I mean, like, but just a guy with a quarter of a mechanical brain. Wouldn't you think?
Whoa,
yeah,
whoa.
Am I taking too much liberty with Naziok?
You're making an assumption.
I would think that if a guy was going to try to like push rings in or do something, wouldn't you use like popsicle sticks or something that aren't going to beat the rings up?
You would think anything other than a hammer and a screwdriver.
I'm not picking on Matt. I mean, Matt's doing what it takes.
It's funny.
If we were stuck on the side of the road and we had a piston, it somehow magically came out of the motor because it needed a ring, we would use a screwdriver to put the piston back in.
Fair enough.
But
if you happen to have a crane and an ability to get the motor out if you had to.
But the reason I brought up Sloppy Matt is he's using, a conventional
screwdriver.
Well, no. A conventional camshaft that comes in the motor. And we'll just talk about 5.3s because that's a good reference. And I think Tad will attest because he was following it on the Facebook or whatever. And
the Book of Faces.
Yep, the Book of Faces. That he made over 1,000 horsepower with like a basically 100% stock 5.3.
Well, no, that was the 6 liter.
All right, 6 liter.
But
I mean,
but he made 992 with a 5.3, didn't he?
I don't know. I don't have the list of
whatever
his accomplishments, but anyway.
I don't think there's any doubt that all your research would show and common sense would dictate that if the motor starts out better, you would think it's got to be slightly better.
Right, but there's got to be things that show up.
Can I add something though?
Yes,
as Matt just put. Rings already have 260K on them, so
they're proven. He has a fair point. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not knocking him for what he did.
It's still a screwdriver.
But it's still a screwdriver.
Yeah.
But I heard people were sending him like, ring compressors.
Yeah, somebody sent him a Jegs or Summit ring compressor for
All right, so then honestly, who's the dumb ones? Us or him? He got himself some ring compressors.
Well, he got himself a post office box, and people are just sending him stuff, so...
So, but you would like to think that some of the changes you would make, and this comes down to the discussion that I wanted to have with people about turbocharging and compression. And we had that discussion all the way back talking about when I just wanted to make a motor for me to drive around with.
Yep.
And you were like, look, you got to be like 9.5, 10 to 1. Mm-hmm. You don't want to take the bottom out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, I was saying, well, if the engine's big, how bad's the bottom going to be? It's not going to be terrible.
Well, yeah, but this engine's not big.
Okay.
The one you were talking about, Dylan, was going to be like 441 or something like that.
Right.
Tall deck.
But the reason for that, and I'm sure all these have answers. I'm sure somebody that's, really well versed at this stuff knows the answer. But if you had, I want to know where the crossover point is. Like if you could have a 5.3 motor and let's say you're using with an iron head, let's say we're using an iron head and it's 8.5 to 1 compression. Mm-hmm. And that enables you, and we'll use pump gas, so we're not throwing the 85 in. Let's say it allows you to make 25 pounds of boost. Well, if you went up to 9 points of compression or 10 points of compression, how much does your boost come down? And because I can tell you that if you went from 8 to 9 on a normally aspirated motor, what are you looking at maximum? Maybe 16 to 20, maybe.
Well, there's a big jump from 8 to 9, and, then a moderate jump
Diminishing
from 9
return.
to 10, and then as you go up, you really don't see it.
Right.
Tons and tons.
So my question would be is if you could put a point of compression in and you pick up, let's say 10 or 20, wherever you're starting out, is that something that multiplies with turbocharging?
Well, actually, the jury's out on that, I think, in almost all cases, because people still do it, and I see it based on pistons. They do it different ways today. There are guys that are still down at 9 to 1, and there's guys that are, I know LS1 guys, or LS guys, that have street stuff at almost 12 to 1, with a supercharger or a turbocharger on it.
But see, my question, I can't, well, look, hold on. Let's have the point of diminishing return conversation here. You would have to think that what compression does, compression utilizes what you've gotten in the chamber more efficiently, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is not by any means a substitute by getting more in the chamber.
Mm-hmm.
But so now you raise compression, you raise your potential and your cylinder pressure before ignition. Obviously, we know if you put too much compression and you have detonation, you have pre-ignition.
Wait, let me just stop you for 1 second, because I don't think the trade-off is a power number, because I don't know until you get to the point of diminishing returns, which would be somewhere up over 11. I don't know that the maximum power number changes. I think what it does, and if anybody on the board or wants to call in and correct me, because I don't know everything, but I think what compression does is purely to be able to get the turbo spooling. And I think you could make the same power with or without compression at some point based on boost level going up. That's what I think. Now, I could be wrong.
Well, see, I was looking at it from another perspective.
I am.
And I had heard this from somebody, these are...
We should have a turbo guy call in.
We should.
Ooh, that would be an idea.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go.
Wait, I remember you have these discussions like over the course of your life, and you remember hearing something, and the problem is sometimes you hear these things and they're wrong, but they stick in your head because it's the first time you heard it.
Like women are crazy?
No,
not that.
That's proven out to be true.
Sorry.
Many, many times over. Tad's so lucky he doesn't have to deal with that.
I know.
When I had heard that some of the guys that could use unlimited boost, that like there was no boost limit, used very low compression because you were filling a larger hole at bottom dead center.
Oh, the tractor pullers do that, so.
They actually do that.
I found a video. I was going to put it up there. Some guy, he's sitting there with ether, 3 cans of ether to get the engine to start because the compression is so low, so they can get that much, like 200 pounds boost into the things. They're ridiculous.
That's true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I believe that. But what I'm saying is like if you had a piston, we obviously know a compression ratio is, this fits into this, and it's how many of these fit into that.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a cylinder that has less compression, you are increasing the amount of charge that you have in there as long as you can get to an efficient, probably pre-ignition pressure. Wouldn't that make sense?
Yeah.
So, this is what I'm saying, that the compression argument would be, now I understand what you're saying. Well, what if you can't get the boost at the RPM level that we're talking about? I understand.
No. That it's a whole bunch of things. I hear what you're saying. Exactly. You're literally making a bigger hole to fill.
Yeah.
Literally.
And I heard that, of all things, from a top alcohol guy when they had no blower limit.
Completely different application.
Why?
Because there's no spooling.
That's true.
Oh, agreed. But I'm saying from the general principle of boost.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't think anybody would argue that. But then you get into the mechanics of, the thing running, doing what I'll coin a phrase from you, doing what you want it to do nicely.
Mm-hmm.
I think compression comes into play. I don't know that we're going to have a problem because we have enough pistons on each side of the engine to spool the size turbos that we're thinking we need.
Well, you see, there's where we get into the questions.
If we could just have a turbo guy call in.
If only we could. Hang on. Maybe this caller knows something.
We'll see.
Hey, buddy, you know anything about turbos?
Well, a little bit. How you doing? How you guys doing?
What's up, Wild Bill from Bullseye Turbo or Bullseye? What is the actual
Bullseye
trade name?
Power?
I always call it Bullseye
Power,
Turbo.
yeah.
Bullseye Power Turbos.
we're starting to call it Bullseye Turbo, believe it or not.
Much easier.
Everybody
Yep.
else does. And our marketing manager said, why do we call it Bullseye Power? What is that? Is that like targets for archery? Well, what are we doing here, guys?
That's a good call.
It is. He's an intelligent kid. And, I told you guys, I just want to real quickly say that I told you I thought it was like the Opie and Anthony show. And I think it's really more like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Why, wandering around stoned?
Yeah,
Is that what it sounds like?
Hey, in case anybody doesn't know, this is Bill from Bullseye Turbo. So we're going to get some answers right now. Bullseye Turbo.
I hope so.
Yeah. Oh, so good to hear your voice again, Bill.
Thanks, guys. It's good to talk to you again, man.
Now, Bill, we were talking, I guess it was Thursday, maybe Wednesday, whatever day I decided to actually call and bother you. Let's have a discussion about, first off, we have a guy that we know. He's a character. He's insistent that turbo maps are everything. Does that really play out as much in?
If you know the VE of the engine, you can apply a turbo map. Most turbocharger compressor maps are a lot of the ones that are out there. First of all, are old and they're from diesel stuff. And there's some companies that post some recent ones occasionally. A lot of companies have steered away from it. And let me just say this: you get guys that call up, and I get it all the time. And they say, "Oh, well, I want to make a turbo selection, and I need a compressor map." And honestly, that's the one I run away from. Because what happens on the map and what they may read, they're intelligent people. I'm not knocking any of them, but what they read and what happens on the map and what happens in the field sometimes are two different things. Just like you guys know, we don't race dynos. So, I usually will try to tell them, listen, you're best off to use what works in the field, and we can probably make that recommendation. This all depends upon whether that person has an ego or not. So that's one reason you see that guarantee on our website. We'll make the recommendation. We'll alleviate the dealer or the end user from the worry of, gee, are they telling me the right thing? Should I split some hairs? Should I call around and get opinions? Should I get on the forums? And then if we make the wrong call, we'll change it till it's right. So now it's on us. That's the main reason we did that, because we have a lot of people that come to us that may have gotten advice from people, and sometimes the people giving advice maybe not comparing apples to apples. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, because I've had people tell me, like, turbos have been reduced down to talking about a size. I mean, that's like they talk about, I guess, like they say a 62, a 66, a 67, but there's so much more to it than that. It's not just that simple.
Yeah, there is. I mean, and if you want to operate in a range on a compressor map for a given application, and that's there, it's doable. There's people out there going, oh, crap. Well, that's doable, and it is. But, most of these applications, the race let's back up. The race applications, this guy's going to close the gate. They operate past the range of the compressor sometimes. They operate far out of the window. Sometimes they're right in the window. It really depends upon the rules, what they allow. And, the guys on the street, there's a lot of guys that say, well, I know how to read a compressor map. I'm an engineer. I want to look at my own and make my own decision, and I know my motor. And that guy can probably make that decision very well.
Not this
guy. He might be listening.
Yeah,
not him.
You don't know the VE, the engine, and that's the missing link. And you don't know that particular compressor map. And there's some accurate ones, but I've seen a lot of them that, yeah, the map makes sense, but it doesn't do that on this engine. So to me, it's just like anything else. You go by what works in the field.
You can't hurt yourself doing that either, because it's stuff you know.
If you've got 100 dealers with 100 different guys with feedback, that's like being a doctor for 100 hospitals that do heart surgery, right?
Or breast implants.
From multiple personalities, people, feelings, attitude, their interpretation of what it may have been and what they may want it to be and what they don't want it to be. And in the end, you can kind of put that puzzle together and go, okay, and then your own testing, and we know what this is going to do and why it's going to do that.
Okay, so now, like when we started talking about this, you said to me, like, well, it's a T3 or T4 and on this side, and it's this, and we can do this. See, this is, and I mean, again, Bill, I've said it just so everybody understands. I know next to nothing about turbochargers. They're the thing that looks like a double-sided hairdryer that blows air into the motor. That's what I know.
Well, it blows magic into
magic. Yes.
Magic.
And out the exhaust by Felicia.
Exactly.
Like they used to accuse me of back in the early 90s. Well, that's just a knob and you turn it up and the boost and power is infinite, so you're outlawed.
So you had stated that, specifically, you just made a comment about there's guys that'll pick a turbocharger and they'll what do? They open the wastegate up because you're going to go beyond the compressor map?
They close the gate.
Close the gate. If you want to make all you can, you're going to close the gate and you're going to run it, and you may run past its efficiency range.
But it's everything the turbo's got.
Get kind of hot.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon?
No, I was just telling Mike that's everything that the turbo has once the gate's closed.
Yeah. And I mean, and don't get me wrong. There's race situations right now where the guys haven't closed the gate. I mean, there's some drag radial cars out there making 70 plus pounds of boost. They're not closing the gate yet. They haven't got there. There's guys that have very fast cars that have gone super fast, and the tune-up looks great, and they've done everything right, and there's 1,000, 1,500 horsepower. They haven't even used that. And I'll give you a perfect example. Look at Rieger way back in the day. Remember that pickup truck?
Mm-hmm.
NMCA, they put weight on them. I don't remember what it was, 300 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood. And the guy went out, made a hit on a qualifier, and he went the fastest he ever went. I think he blew the index away by like 0.2. And it may have been 2, it may have been 2.5. I might be a bit exaggerating, but it was enough that he passed the scales and was smart enough to say to them, I'm light. It was just a test run. Because even with all the technology they had then and the infinite wisdom of Kenny Duttweiler, who, is one of the reasons I got into this many, many, many years ago, they still were learning things, and you're always learning. So he went out and blew that index away, and it wasn't long before they figured out that, hey, they put weight in this car and it went faster.
Oops.
Prime example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So with respect to the compressor map and sizing a turbocharger, and I mean, again, I don't want to talk about compressor maps. I don't want to get into, I want to just talk about operation. If we're sizing a turbo, if the turbo is undersized, then you run the risk of obviously in an extreme case, you run the risk of hurting the turbocharger, but what you're really doing is you're running outside of its efficiency and you're just making more heat than you are boost.
Well, you might be running into surge.
Okay.
So that's not good for it. Surge, depending on the type of turbo, can knock the back of the bearing out. Sometimes, in a high horsepower application, surge can actually break a shaft. I'll give you an example. Big diesel, what somebody mentioned, pulling tractors or sleds earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Real good possibility to do that there. Surge is a really bad thing. So these guys that look for that island, they want to be somewhere in the middle and be in the sweet spot of the turbo, and that's where everything's happy. But again, that doesn't always happen in the field.
Okay. We have a guy in the chat room asking about compound turbos, and I'm actually, I know Mike wants to get more information on our stuff, but I'm kind of curious.
You can see that Mike is sitting here stitching stuff together.
Yeah,
in his head.
I know.
I'm trying to formulate the next question so I don't sound like quite the idiot on this subject that I am.
Well, I'm just curious about compound turbos a little bit. You must have a little experience there, no?
A little, not a lot. My partner is the compound guy. He's basically the engineer for our company. So he does pretty much all the compound stuff, which is primarily popular on diesel applications. There are gas applications with it. You guys know I've done single and twin forever in gas and methanol applications. That's what I know best. I may be able to answer the question. I may not.
Well, I mean,
it's not really my area of focus or even the area I like. So
that's all right. Then I think Mike probably has something stitched together anyway, because, I guess what we're looking for is what to do about, two turbo system to make, I guess we're talking about 1,400 at the crankshaft, 1,500.
Probably if you want no cushion. Yeah. I mean, that's probably, ideally I'd like enough power for the thing to be able to go probably approaching like 8.0.
Yeah.
I
thought we did the math and 15 would do that.
Can we, let me just clarify, we're talking compound as opposed to twin. No.
We're done with compound. I'm not going to hold you to that if you're not the expert. We'll have your partner on one day.
Okay.
For the diesel guys.
This is the time that I am going to be self-serving, and this is going to be about me.
time, let me say this, the only time anybody wants to do compound in our arena is when they want enough power that they can't get the transient response, the spool, the turbo to come alive, so they use a small turbo to get things rolling, recompress the air into a larger turbo, and then get your total power.
Got it. And I know it's mostly in the diesel stuff. I see it there.
It is. And I mean, there's some gas engines like that. I've had guys come to me with DSMs and say, I want to make this much, and it's out of the window with the motor. It's going to take such a big turbo, it's going to be a turd. So I would like to figure out, can we compound it? Yeah, we could put a little turbo in there and get it rolling with that. Those ratios, my partner Dave has pretty well memorized. He's done a lot of that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that is interesting stuff, and that is something I'd like to talk about when we got nothing else to talk about.
I'm just a dumbass, I'll tell you right now.
That's all right.
So what I want to know, and like what Tom was just talking about, if you have a horsepower number in mind, so if somebody calls up and they say, look, I need to make approximately this, the motor's going to be this displacement. Does that drop you in a range of turbochargers, or is there an ideal one specifically to do just that job? Or could you run we'll say, lesser output turbo a little more aggressively, or are you better off trying to use an oversized or something that's really a touch too big and then doing what you said, like running on the wastegate?
The worst thing you can do is ask me a question with multiple questions in it. Right?
Sorry.
You guys are going to have to sit back for 20 minutes now. So to answer your question, there's several considerations. With the technology today, you don't necessarily have to operate out of the efficiency of the turbo, and a lot of times, most of the time, still give the customer what they want as far as horsepower. I come across a customer once every 2 years that says, I want to make boost in a quarter second. He wants it to be like a supercharger. I want to make boost in a quarter second. I want to race stoplight to stoplight, and I need it to come on right now. And, that's just not possible to do. You can make them pretty snappy. What us turbo guys consider pretty snappy is a lot different than a guy that may have had a naturally aspirated or a nitrous motor. So customer interpretation is the first thing you got to look at. What is their expectation? When they ask me and I'm telling them what I think it is, how does that line up to their expectation? The first thing I do is I typically ask them primary use of the vehicle. We get into cubic inches, and it can be basic. They could say, well, it isn't built yet. It may be from this to this, and it doesn't matter. If I know the base of what the engine is, I already know where we're at. Next thing is the type of fuel being used. Sometimes it'll come down to whether it's a stick or an automatic. Sometimes, and these are rare questions, the weight of the vehicle, whether it's going to be single, twin, T3, T4, T6, V-band, small V-band, large V-band. And sometimes that's just up to what the customer wants or what you may find is best for him and say, listen, this is what you need to do. If you do this, you're going to be real happy.
Okay, well, let's just halt right there for just a second.
The last thing is horsepower at the wheels. Put that into your calculation.
Okay.
Or flywheel, whatever way they want to do it.
Okay, so we've got, like you brought up the same things you were bringing up to me, T3, T4. That's now what I've come to understand is that is exhaust housing stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'll typically give a customer the options before I give him my suggestion. I want to find out where he's at, because if he's way out in left field on it, or he's gotten some advice that may be different than what we may be able to do for him, then I need to figure out if I can reel him back in and show him why I improve it. If he knows exactly what he wants, then I can say, okay, well, you let me know what you want to do, and we'll do it. One of the reasons we did that, that performance guarantee, because it alleviates that, liability on the customer's end of, well, what if this isn't right, what they're telling me to do? And that happens with everything from pistons to camshafts.
Yep.
You've dealt with plenty of high-performance guys. I mean, I am one. I've been racing since I was 18, so I'm really no different. And I understand the mentality of some of those people.
We used to do that with the drag guys, with the stock or super stock guys. We'll sell you a camshaft. You do everything we say. If you don't go faster, we'll take it back.
Yep.
Right.
Always did it.
Right. And the thing is, and when you do that, you got to do it with the right guy. You got to make sure you know that he's a guy that's able to tune his stuff. And I like to do that with people that are in charge of their own program. If they're relying on somebody else, they're relying on maybe a different tuner, the tuner's pitching for the other team, then your stuff's never going to shine.
Yeah.
So, there's a slight amount of politics involved in that, and, I run into that quite a bit, actually. So I'm super careful on that. I want to make sure the guy knows what he's doing, or he's working with somebody that maybe I know or that I know they know what they're doing. And then, that program works great.
Okay.
Almost every single time, 99% of the time, they're going to come back and go, wow. The times that we run into the problem are, when they're not in control of that program, they have to rely on somebody that may, they may be using a different product line, and they say, the first thing they say is, well, this is what I do when I do one. So you need this cam, you need this turbo, you need this header, you need this, you need that, and this is how I do it, this is my model. And that's what they know. So you're not going to gain any space on that particular application unless the customer's in complete control.
Okay. So now when you had brought up the different exhaust housings, is that a way to tune the overall turbo package? Like if you went from a T3 to a T4, is it just the size of the housing? Is it the way that
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes. Size of the housing is one thing. Sometimes it's for fitment and space constraint, and we can find a particular horsepower level for a customer with stuff that's smaller than somebody may think and still make it work, because we can put a very big turbine wheel into a smaller housing. The air still has to make a 90-degree turn around the turbine wheel, so the turbine wheel is still a big focus on the engine's ability to make power and perform properly. So you have weight, you have size constraints, and then sometimes you have a customer that they already have either a manifold or headers. So if they have either one of those already, then you've got to find a way to make what they want fit that particular scenario.
All right. So if we don't have either, well, let me give you some parameters real quick.
I like the idea of V-band because that just sounds cool.
Sure. Yeah, I know. Me too. So 3,600 pound auto. I think we're going to run like E98 or E85, something like that. It's going to be about 330 cubic inches. It's a drag car.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of has to drive, I'm not going to say it has to drive like a car that you go to the store and pick up a coffee, but it's got to drive nice.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Mike would say, nicely. And it's got to make 50.
Why you got to fuck with me, dude?
Because you had a bad day.
And it's got to idle in the
Piling on.
the drive-through.
It's got eyelets in the drive-through at Sonic.
Idle at 600.
Yep. But anyway, it's going to be like 330 or 340 cubic inches.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we need
So give me the cubes again.
like 330.
40 or
No.
40?
340?
No.
30.
No. With a
440.
4-inch arm and a thing, it's going to be like
440.
How many-
360.
How many liters?
I think it's like a 6. It ends up, doesn't a 5.3 with a 4-inch arm end up coming up to?
I don't know. I
Hold on.
didn't do that math.
Let me pull it, and I have another recommendation for our listeners
you have
at
an
some
app?
point. Yes,
Bro.
I do.
Are they paying you?
No.
Well, then don't tell them. What? Oh, it's just a nice guy thing.
Yeah, it's a nice guy thing. I've used this forever.
All right.
So go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
Well, he's waiting on you to see how many cubic
Okay,
inches.
Give me the scenario of cubic inches again, because I couldn't hear you.
360
Okay, 360. What type of motor?
LS.
Okay, LS motor, 360 inches, and you said E85 or E98, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and is it going to be a stick or an automatic?
Automatic.
Okay, and what's the primary use of that particular vehicle? What's it going to be for? I heard the idle at the Sonic. Is it going to be a streetcar weekend work?
No, it's got to run 850. I mean, we want it to run 8.
It's a streetcar.
Well, it's going to go way faster than that. Hopefully, we want to back it off to go 850.
Sure, I understand that. So that's totally doable. Look at Pinky, Cal Hayward's car. Look at Clark. I know you've had him on the show. The black black Camaro.
Yep.
Perfect examples of second daily drivers. 850 is really super doable, even on 360 inches. And you guys, I mean, I've had some experience with some of those small motors. I mean, back in 2011, heck, we had that little 30282 deck motor. It was 347 inches. We had that thing going low teens, 180 at like 2,400 pounds. It was pretty stout. So 360 inches. I would ask you next if you want to do twins or single.
Yeah, there's another question. This is when, and you understand where I'm coming from, Bill, when you're the guy on the outside listening to all this stuff.
It'd be very confusing.
Yes. So you have people talk about, and I know that certainly you can't take a pair of 62s and say, okay, a pair of 62s equals a 104 or, a 112. It's not how that works. There's more to it than that.
Correct.
If you had a single turbo, what are there additional considerations made to make sure they spool? Because everybody said, well, you got a single, it's harder to get, it's harder to spool, it's harder to do this. Does that really happen? I mean, to answer your question, yes, this will be a twin.
It can be depending on the application. So, and it also depends upon the particular turbine, what turbine wheels and housings are available. So if a guy says to me, I have a guy that calls me, and I'm going to steer for the 360, we'll get back to it. Guy calls and says, well, I've got this car, and I want an 88 millimeter turbo. And I say, okay, I don't want to sell him something and not be right, so I have to ask. Well, can I ask why you're looking for an 88? Is it a class car? Is it a daily driver? Because 88 millimeter has been marketed to him, and he believes that's the number to have. And that's, what companies do. You remember Vortec years ago? They had a tech back in 03, 04, 05, somewhere around there. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 96, around there, 97. They had a 5-pound and an 8-pound kit.
Yep.
Well, somebody else came out with a 6-pound and a 9-pound kit. So then they said, well, we're going to call it a standard and an HO kit because somebody marketed a boost figure and it hurt their sales.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the very same thing with turbos and millimeters. So the 88's marketed to the guy, and this is a guy that tells me, no, I know a 72 will do it. I have to have an 88. You don't understand. Or the dealer says, my guy has to have an 88. It's what he wants. Well, part of life is trying to get what you want. So now I say, okay, 88, great. What kind of power you want to make? I want to make 1,200. Well, 1,200's a joke for an 88.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question is, I know you want it to spool quick, correct? Oh, yeah. Quick spool is always the first consideration in any application. Unless the guy calls and says, I need to make, 3,500 horsepower on my 3-liter, and I don't care if it spools because I'm going to the mile and I'm going to run there. I don't care if it comes out at a half mile. It's always the first consideration, so it goes without saying. So a guy never has to say to us, I want it to spool fast. We're applying that to it without even,
Yeah, because that's part of it.
raising that subject.
Right.
Right. This today, that's a given. 10 years ago, you got what you got, and you made the best of it, and you figured out how to make it work better. So he says 1,200. So okay, we can do that. I'm going to give him a real small turbine housing. And I'm going to give him a turbine housing that's going to cap off 1,100 horsepower. Here's what happens now. He runs that car, it gets wrecked, or he blows the motor. 4 years later, he sells the turbo. And I get a guy that calls me and goes, hey, I got you one of your 88s. I'm going to make 1,600 with it. And I look it up. I say, who'd you get it from? And I look, and I go, you're not going to make 16 with that. Or I don't get the call until after. And they go to the dyno and say, well, this thing's supposed to make 16. It only made 12.
Gotcha.
That's because when it was originally sized, it was sized with the fastest spool in mind to meet that horsepower requirement of that particular customer.
Okay. Yeah, because when you and I were talking about, you were like,
the money and ship it in the box. We try to give them what they're actually after.
Right. Because when you and I were talking about this, you're like, well, you could use this turbocharger because if you don't and you want to change stuff, then you got to change hot side, cold side. This is a one-time build. This is not, I mean,
it's not going to go faster.
No, I'm not the guy. It's going to be like, all right, because I mean, you get, Bill, exactly these guys. They buy stuff and they're like, well, I only want to go, 9.0 and I'm happy. And 2 weeks later, he calls you up and says, I want to go 850.
830 or 850, sure.
Right. This car has a goal and that's it.
We're going to build this car. We're going to go to drag week. We're going to win that. And then it's going to be Mike's street car.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much how it's going to happen.
Unless somebody wants to give me like $500,000 for it.
Is that what you need to run, Mike? Is 850 to be in this class competitive?
No, we got to run like 18s or 80s.
Okay. I always leave a 20% cushion when I size turbos for a customer. 2 reasons. One, because you mentioned they're going to want to go faster. 2, what's the point of running it with its tongue hanging out if you don't have to, and I can still give them the spool that they want? So I'll typically, whatever number they give me, I'll ask them, are you padding that number, or is that what you really want?
Well, if you can get us to go 8.0, you don't need to pad the number.
Yeah, at all.
That's what we're doing.
But you see, Bill, here's like the questions that now come into mind, knowing, and this is what was starting to roll through my head when I was talking to you. If you use a turbocharger that's more geared to make, let's say, exactly what you need to make, how are other aspects of the turbocharger for, let's say, controllability? Like if you had a turbocharger that was, let's say, size, let's say that our number here, we needed to make 1500. We got a pair of turbos. Are the ones making 1500 easier to control, like with a wastegate, say transitioning from, say, a 5-pound boost scenario and ramping it nicely? Like, is one better to control than another because it's
only if the size of the turbo is so much larger that it's ridiculous. So once you pass the transition of manifold negative pressure or vacuum into a boost scenario, typically that's what we call on the pipe. But once those things are lit, your transition from 5 pounds to 20 or 25, whatever it may be, is minuscule, unless you had some big, stupid, lazy turbo application or a really lazy motor or an issue with the motor. No, these days, no.
The bigger problem would be the wastegate controlling it to do what we want. It's not the turbo truck.
It's not a big deal either. I mean,
no. But I hear what you're saying. The turbo
job is,
yeah, the turbo gets there. Yep,
correct. The wastegate's job is to get rid of power.
Right, manage power. Right. Yep,
it's to get rid of it. Get rid of exhaust energy, so we don't make too much unless we're in a situation where we want to close the gate and direct all that energy towards the turbo, towards the turbo wheel.
Right. Mike looks dumbfounded right now. I wish we got to get cameras. I know I've said it 100 times, but we have to.
Because I think I'm.
Can I cover something real quick, Mike? You guys were talking about compression and boost.
Yep.
This is a very simple answer. A motor is only provided the motor is sealed up. It's not leaking. It doesn't have a poor VE. It's got a proper camshaft that doesn't have a bunch of overlap that's letting the charge go out the tailpipe and contaminating the intake charge. Provided that's, all things being equal and we have a decent motor, whether the motor makes 7.5 to 1 compression or 10 to 1 compression, let's say we stuck, 1,000 horsepower turbo on it, it is only going to make whatever pounds a minute of air that turbo can move into it. So if we have a motor that made 600 on motor and we put a turbo on it, it made 1,200, and the turbo's tapped out, the gate's shut, it moves just enough air to make 1,200 horsepower. And now we go back to the dyno on NA and we make another 100 horse NA, and we have a motor that the V is not out the window. It's not a pile of crap. It didn't have 2 flat lobes. It didn't have rings that weren't sealing. It didn't have valves that were burnt. It was a decent motor. And we found a way to make another 100 horsepower motor. We increased the compression. We got aggressive with the camshaft. Maybe we used a low drag ring package. Put that turbo back on. Guess what it's going to make? 1,200.
Yep. Same thing. Yeah, we get that.
And that's
atmosphere inside an engine. You can only make the engine more efficient. Now the engine, and I'm coming from, I've been playing with those small blocks for 30 years. Now the engine is just a stupid pile of crap. Its job is just to stay together.
Yep.
Okay. Well, and that makes sense, and that's probably why really talking is in terms of boost is not necessarily the proper term. It's probably the volume that actually yields your boost.
Well, yeah, pounds.
Yeah. Correct. And when we're talking about cylinder volume, and you touched on this, and you being an engine builder, you get this. Let's just say we have 60 cc's of available space to put air into, and we're making 30 pounds of boost or whatever it may be. Well, now we say, okay, well, this motor was 9 to 1. We're going to make it 11 to 1. We're going to make, what it does naturally aspirated. You know the difference from 9 to 1 to 11 to 1. And as you go higher up, that scale falls backwards, of course. And the guy says, hey, we're going to make it 11 to 1. Well, here's what happens that nobody realizes. You have less space to pack the air into. Okay, great. Well, we got compression, though. Oh, the boost gauge says I made more. It makes no difference. You've got less space to pack air into, so now you're going to fight to pound that air into the cylinder. And what nobody realizes that does happen inside that engine is the air intake temperature is raised dramatically because you're creating temperature. Just call it friction if you want. You're creating temperature, forcing that air into the cylinder. So in a lot of scenarios, lower compression is to your advantage. That depends upon the fuel you're running. Methanol motors act a little differently. It depends upon the combustion chamber in the head, whether it's a high swirl. A high swirl cylinder head doesn't like a lot of timing. You know what I mean? If you run a methanol, sometimes you need enough compression to get it lit and get a complete burn, and that depends upon the ignition that somebody may have too. So there's some variables in there, but the bottom line, no matter any of those variables between fuel and everything else, and guys that have high compression have gotten really fast in a Pro Mod, still have 1,000 horsepower they haven't used even though the plug looks good. The bottom line is that you're packing the air in the cylinder, and if you make it harder to pack the air in, you put less in that space, you superheat that air, it's less efficient of a charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing we were talking about on compression was when you have a turbo that's maybe a little bit on the biggest side because you need the top side of the compressor map, it would spool better with a little more compression. But
Sure. So compression is going to increase your spool. It increases your bottom end. And let's just say we take a motor that runs 24 degrees on Q16 at 30 pounds of boost, and the motor's 8-to-1, and the guy goes to 9-to-1, and it's a high squirrel cylinder head, like say maybe a Yates or something like that. So they raise it a point. What happens? They make a little more bottom end. They make the same power. They change a little bit of where they made it. But the bottom line, the only other thing that happened is in the big end, they pull 2 degrees of timing out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
To get the tune up the same.
Okay.
Keep the heads on it.
See, the reason that I was asking about the responsiveness of the turbo, I was thinking from the other aspect, I'm probably not asking it correctly because I wasn't asking.
I'm not answering correctly either, though. I'm fixated sometimes.
Yeah, well, I'm not. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how.
Why
to
don't I
vocalize.
ask it and Tad will answer it since you guys are such idiots. You're saying
really going to keep fucking me?
No,
today,
I mean
huh?
you're saying you can't answer it. Bill's saying he doesn't. He's giving the wrong answers anyway. So,
but when I was talking about like the size,
No, that's a CYOA.
when I was talking about the size of the turbocharger and the response, I wasn't talking so much about the engine, or the turbo coming into boost. I was talking about, let's say you had to remove quickly 2 pounds of boost or put in 3 pounds of boost. Does a turbocharger
that'll be the wastegate job?
Yeah.
You want that turbocharger to maintain that shaft speed so the response is there when you get back in it. So that's down to gate sizing.
Okay, gate sizing. So you're saying that the accuracy of a turbocharger size at low boost doesn't have anything to do with how controllable it would be.
Correct, unless it was so far out of the window that it belonged on the application in the first place.
So I guess, Bill, what you're saying is you're going to be able to get us close enough and efficient enough that we don't need to worry about compression that much. We're going to put it where you think or we think the engine is going to be happiest, be
Correct.
it 8-to-1, 9-to-1.
Heat soak and other things, I'm going to steer you guys towards lower compression because on something that sees street miles and may roll into the track, and then it rolls out to the next track, and maybe there's no time, and you had another problem you had to deal with, so now you got to get on the road and make hits. You don't have time to cool it down. The clock's running out. Heat soak's very important. I don't know if you plan to run AC or not or anything else or sit in traffic, but people forget about heat soak and detonation, so that doesn't necessarily mean that the tune-up's wrong or anything else. And, you can make it lazier and you can run more octane, but when it comes to heat soak, especially in street applications, I like to keep the compression low. If we've got the right turbo on it, we've got enough motor, it doesn't matter anyway.
Okay.
Hey, what do you think about using a gate on a charge pipe?
People do it. Uncork the pipe to get it to spool fast.
You like it?
Puts the shaft speed into oblivion, gets it moving, then you close the gate. It can be dangerous, and I only mean dangerous from, you can cause a turbo to fail sometimes if it's not done right. It's very popular in the imports. The guys, I help a lot of import guys with clutch cars over the years, and it's real popular there. They'll, now technology's changing again, but I'll go back, and I'm sure guys still do it. Go back 5-10 years ago, there were guys that were running way too big a turbo for the application, going very fast, uncorking the charge pipe to make boost, and then closing it when the boost was up because the shaft speed goes into oblivion. Like I said, there's probably still guys doing it. I think now with technology between ECMs and fuel injection, and obviously almost everybody's running methanol these days, which makes it more snappy. I think there's enough of other parameters that have changed. There's less people doing it, but it's still something that's done, especially if you got a turbo that's really big for the application.
Got it.
I was gesticulating. I can't even talk today. Because that was the opening the intake side to allow bypass to get the turbocharger to spool was something I told Anthony, when he first went that direction. And I said, there's got to be a way to make that work. I always think
him into running turbos, don't you?
No, I don't know who talked him into it. I know that he, I remember when he first did it, he was laughing, like after the first couple of passes.
Yeah, hey, that was down at Echo, actually. I was there.
Hey, Bill,
out of that car, he lit us there. He goes, damn, that thing is fast.
Hey, one more fast question from a listener. Do you guys make reverse rotation turbos?
No, we don't. The patent was originally held by Nelson in California, not Nelson Racing Engines in Florida, but in California.
Yeah, yep.
And Garrett does. They do have a couple of models now. I think they probably worked the deal out with Nelson.
Really?
Yeah, so they've made a couple of models reverse rotation.
It's really just, if you guys don't know who Nelson is, he builds these crazy engines, and he gets the symmetrical look of the turbos.
So is this a cosmetic thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Well, I mean, I don't think the
it's aesthetics.
yeah,
it's cosmetic and aesthetics. It's nothing to do with performance.
Yeah, the intake doesn't care which.
I want my pipes to run the same direction. It would make it so much easier to pipe, and it just looks good.
It does look good.
You know, to me, yeah. To me, I like the right and the left look, and the creativeness of making that fit and work and still look good after you're done. I've seen some that look, like ass. Don't get me wrong, but but there's a percentage of people that like that.
So that's patented.
A few requests on it. Maybe once every 6 months somebody will ask me about it. It's not very often.
But it's patented, so it doesn't really matter.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay without a left and a right facing symmetrical whatever.
Honestly, it does look very cool.
Okay. That's great.
It does. You talk about haters.
And the right application, again, it makes it a lot easier to pipe.
Yeah. Yep.
Especially if you've got no, space under the hood.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mike's just a natural born hater.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's right, Mike, I'm with you. I like to challenge myself.
All right. So now let's specifically get into this. We were talking, you were saying your 72 unit, because that would afford me the opportunity to go further with the car if I wanted to.
And that 72, later when the disease takes you over, like it does all of us,
not
you over the
happening.
years.
Yeah, it's not going to happen with him.
Yeah,
sure.
But, hey, can you guys? Do we have this on tape right now?
Yes.
Bill, you don't know him. Like, believe me, when I tell you it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen.
Maniacal.
Okay.
I am doing this is because I am doing this class, these rules, unless they turn around and say, okay, look, now you don't have to go 850, you got to go 80. Then maybe we'd have this conversation. This is going this, and that's it.
Yep.
Understood. So 2 reasons then. One is because that turbo is upgradable, primarily. So when you sell that setup to somebody that wants to go faster, then they can utilize it. Second reason is that the next frame size down turbo, 1, it might be a little bit smaller, but 2, it's not as good a turbo.
Okay.
72 and up is a really good turbocharger,
Okay.
especially for what you're doing.
Okay.
How much power will a pair of them make ultimately?
72s, it'll depend on the turbo wheel. With the small turbo wheel, it'll tap out between 16 and 1800. With the intermediate turbo wheel, it'll tap out between 18 and 2. And the large turbo wheel, I wouldn't build it with. I'd go to a 74, 75, or 76 before I stick a large turbo wheel in. It'd be a waste of energy.
Okay.
So the same frame size, I have a pair in my my little car. That same frame size, I have an 83. They're an 83 and 96. They'll make about 3,200 a pair of those, and that's a pretty small turbo to make 3,200 horsepower.
Wow.
They are no joke. Those things, they're really not.
Well, here's another question. I used to know it. I thought I used to know it. Somebody else asked the difference on the exhaust turbine housing, the divided housing between the standard and the divided. What's the
benefit
or reality? So.
Oh, divided versus open volute?
Yeah.
Okay, so originally, I won't say originally, but divided was designed for small engines so they can direct the pulses in. When they build a header, direct the pulses into each side of that turbo for proper spool to have the cylinders hit in a timely fashion. And it was also used in diesel applications, and today still there's a lot of diesel applications that need that divided housing. That doesn't mean a divided housing on a dragway car or on a race car is going to do it any good. In fact, sometimes even a divided housing makes no difference. It's not going to hurt anything either. Again, if you're sizing that turbine housing to an application and you have 5, say, for this particular application, and they're all divided, then you're going to pick the one that's going to flow what it needs to flow, division or not. But it's important to have it when you need it. It doesn't matter if you have it when you don't.
I actually, way back in the old days with Volkswagens and stuff, saw a guy that used it divided, and he'd shut one side off of it. He claimed to get the turbo to spool faster, then he'd open it back up when the motor was in boost.
Mm-hmm. Quick spool valve.
Whoa.
Oh.
He was tricked.
He was tricked before he knew it back in the 80s.
That's a pretty slick deal. Yeah, that's a real slick deal.
Well, while I got you on here, Bill, let's settle something for Ted.
Okay.
What actually spins the turbine wheel? Is it heat? Is it exhaust energy? What is it?
It's a combination of both. It's thermal expansion. Did you ever see a votive candle at Christmas time? You light the candle, a little angel turns.
Sure.
It's virtually the same thing. You have to have exhaust energy, and you have to have heat. That's why people say, oh, I wrap my pipes and I put a blanket on my turbine housing and it spools faster because they kept the heat in. So you have to maintain the heat, and you have to
in the volute,
have the exhaust energy to match the size of the turbine wheel to get the job done. You're using that word volute, I see.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the new keyword.
I think he's fucking with me because I said it a long time ago. And
No, I'm not. No, somebody on chat room just said it.
And they're fucking with it because I said it.
I know.
Bunch of dicks.
We have an evil chat room.
Well, at least you don't call it the cover.
Yeah,
No.
the cover.
It's definitely the volute.
That's a nitrous Pete phrase, the cover.
Cover the turbine housing, and that helps a lot.
See, Neil Schwitzer's laughing his ass off right now because I said volute.
That's great. That's
He
wonderful.
says the keyword of the day.
Yeah,
So
it is.
All right.
All right, I'm done saying it.
Last thing, Bill, on those particular 72 turbos that you recommended, how are they size-wise compared to the first ones we were talking about?
What was 66s, 7s?
Bigger overall diameter on the cover, so it's not tremendous. So you're talking about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch on each side of the cover. Not tremendous. They're about an inch longer.
You think we'd really be doing ourselves a disservice getting the 67s?
Yeah, I wouldn't put the little turbos on that application. I wouldn't even consider it.
Because down the road we're not going to be able to make more power?
Not only that, they're just not good enough for that job.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean,
They're not a bad turbo. They're not a bad product. I've got more guys probably driving on the street with those than anything else. But you're a lot better off with the next frame up.
Okay. Because
So much better a turbo, and it's going to deliver really cool air intake temps. Being ball bearing, it's going to be super responsive.
Is it going to sound really cool?
That stainless housing
Ooh.
also holds heat in, which is back to that thermal expansion and exhaust energy. So that stainless
polished.
housing is going to also help your spool and transient response.
okay. And the only reason I was asking about that is also the space requirement because of where they go in this car. It's
It's really tight.
Corvette, yeah.
It's tight.
Give me your horsepower figure again, because I'd have to look at my notepad at my desk to remember where you were.
1,500 flywheel.
There's so many variables. 1,500?
At the flywheel, yeah.
that was 360.
I mean, you'd about be close to running those things with their tongue hanging out. That's why I'd rather put you in a 72 also.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little too much heat.
Well, I mean, then that's
It doesn't mean it's not going to work, and I'm sure it's doable. Let me say this, if it was my car and you asked me which one I want to run, I'd be running the 72.
okay. Well, then it's a matter if Tim can get them in there and make them, livable and like where they have to
And
go.
if he can't, then we'll go to the 67. I mean, we'll go to that if we have to. I don't have a problem doing that. That's not a big deal. That's all part of this business, unfortunately, is fitment and sizing, and you can't believe how many things change after a customer makes a purchase decision. It's just part of it. You got to be open-minded to it. You got to be ready to do what you got to do to make it work. So it doesn't mean you're locked in. If there's a fitment issue, we'll do what we got to do.
Okay.
Is the volute size markedly bigger on the 72 than 67?
The volute. On which one? On 6?
I don't know.
That again.
I don't really want that answer, man. Just say yes or no. It doesn't.
2 to 67, same size cover.
Oh, there you go. Oh, you called it a cover, smartass. I like that.
Right. It is a cover.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that helps with the sizing discussion and why. But you see, those are the questions I had. Like, if you have a turbocharger that was ideal versus too small versus too big, or if you have ideal is dead center and you were on either side of ideal to, it will work. What are the pros and the cons?
Better choice of the two when that happens.
Yeah, well, he's saying the 72s are ideal because of intake charge temps and you know,
and that all makes perfect sense.
Out. Yeah.
Yep. So all makes perfect sense.
You're going to make the power at a lot lower boost level than you will 67s.
Okay. Got it. All right.
Well, it's about efficiency. I don't want to knock those 67s or 66s. I mean, I sell a ton of them, but the guys that buy them have a different requirement than you do. So it doesn't. I don't want to knock the turbo. It doesn't take anything from the turbo, but you know, you're going to go out and do this, and you're going to drive this thing on the street, and you say 1500, and it was 850. It might be 18s, and it might wind up being 790 because I can tell you when Clark came to me, it wasn't going to be 7s than it is now.
Well, he is running a different class.
Slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I understand, but that whole mentality, you know, changes, and
not here. It doesn't. I'm telling you, it doesn't change, Bill.
You don't understand. If I could, you know, put, and then it's part of the reason I was thinking about, you know, charge gates and waste gates and response time of the turbos. If I can find a way to make that thing go 850 with a 1 every pass, it will never need to go past. I don't feel the need to have a big dick measuring contest to see who can run it out the back end.
I get that, dude. And you know, you guys may need to, things in the class may change a little bit if it does. I mean, and you're in this thing, you're going to drive around a week, and I'm going to beat on you now, Mike. You're going to drive around a week and invest all this time. If you got to pick up a 10th to put yourself where you need to be, you're going to do it.
No, yeah, that's true. That's true. Like if I mean, look, if we put it together and it went 860,
you're going to run it.
That'd be a problem.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we put it together and went 860, then yeah, I would do whatever it took to get it to where it needed to be.
And that's the way I look at it. Remember, you're talking to a racer from the get-go. Sometimes that can be a problem. Sometimes it's to your advantage, but that's the way I look at it. So we need to stack the deck in your favor on the front end and assume the worst. And then if it's not great, we're covered.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. We're covered. We're voluted.
You're voluted.
All right. Well, fantastic.
Voluted, bro.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I got to tell you, Bill, thanks for the help. And like I said, and I'm sure that there's a bunch of people that have listened and they hear all the terms and everything. And by the way, you know, a guy just asked on the chat room, did we ever get to the bottom of what spool's better, a single or a dual, or is it just a single or a twin, or is it just sizing could be?
Application specific, but 90% of the time, the twin's going to be better. Really going to depend on the application. Sometimes it's cubic inch, sometimes it's horsepower requirement, and then it comes down to sizing. So it's really hard to compare the two because in most applications, when a guy comes to me and says, I want to make this much power, I can always find a pair of smaller twins that'll do as well or better. Here's the kicker with twins. They have a better torque curve. They have better transient response. But once the thing's moving, even in a pedal situation, it's a lot easier to get a lighter rotating assembly moving and keep it moving than it is a heavier rotating assembly. So you guys know I've raced both over the last 20 years. I've had single and twin probably 10 times, if not more, stick and automatic both back and forth. And you see what's on the car now. It's twins, and there's plenty of big singles out there that make big power. Don't get me wrong. I don't really care for them.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'll always talk a guy into twins if I can, and not because I'm selling them two, unless it's a class or he says, hey, I want to make 750 and I got a small block. Well, heck, any old 75 radial do that all day long, even with the wrong housing and wheel on pump gas. Not a big deal. Those are fine applications, but when you start getting up into the teens and higher for horsepower, the twins they're to me, and it's my opinion, they're much better suited.
Well, the controllability aspect, and that's kind of what I was asking. And see, this I was probably asking it wrong. Like, does sizing, now obviously we know going from the extreme of a single to twins changes how recoverable they are, how they behave like in a pedal situation. That's some of the stuff that I was talking about. Because I'm fully aware that this thing is not exactly going to always stay glued to the racetrack. You know, this is something that's going to require some management. That's why I was asking those questions.
Absolutely. You may be backpedaling it. You'll probably have situations like that where you're going to be in and out of the throttle. In that case, and let's just say you're down track and let's say it's 7,500 RPM and you're 24 pounds of boost or 40 pounds of boost, doesn't make a difference. You can backpedal it. You got wastegates, you got blow-off valves. You take your foot out of the throttle, and the blow-off valve opens, and it blows out a bunch of charge, and the turbo maintains its shaft speed, and the hot air that would have got slammed into the throttle body and slammed back into the compressor wheel, trying to turn the whole unit backwards and superheat everything, all goes out the blow-off valve, and you get back in the throttle, and the valve closes, and boom, off you go.
Okay.
And you usually crash the car when you do that. But anyway.
Well, it has happened to me.
And more times than not, buddy.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. But, the reality is that down track, it's not going to be a big difference.
Okay.
If that thing's under load, single or twin, either one, the response is about the same.
Okay.
It's really, it's more manageable, usable power with twins than a single in most applications. But again, it doesn't apply to everything. There's plenty of singles out there that we do, even like an Ultra, that they're tremendous. I mean, they work great. Could I size a pair of twins if the rules allowed it that would work as well or better? Absolutely.
Got it.
So, the rules dictate everything, and what's marketed dictates everything, and then you've got to figure out how to make that fit because it's perception, unfortunately.
All right, last thing.
Mm-hmm.
You better be going to Dubai with me.
You know what, dude, I think I'm going to do it. You convinced me when we talked earlier.
Good. It'll be fun. It'll be good for you. Really?
Especially if I'm going with you, right? I'm flying right next to you, sitting right next to you the whole time.
Well,
then
you better cough up the big ticket then, buddy.
I'll meet you there.
No, you can fly with me. You're gonna have to.
I think I just come up to New Jersey, see the family, and I'll go to your house and we'll go.
There you go.
See, that's what happened, Tom. When you brought Howard, you made Howard ride in the steerage section.
I didn't make anybody ride anywhere.
Okay,
but yeah, I mean, if you're
kind of guy you are,
if you're gonna ride with me, you're gonna have to kick out the front seat though.
Yeah, but somebody's got to bring back the hot nut bowls.
This is just the derailment that occurs in his head is just insane.
Oh God! All right, well, we'll talk about that at a later date. But I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about it's the right thing to do because it is. That was for you, Bill.
No. I appreciate that, buddy.
All right, Bill.
Right on.
Plug Bullseye.
I'm mellow tonight, can't you tell?
I know. I've never heard you like this. I like it.
It's because it was
I'll tell you guys to shut up and just keep on rambling on.
it was a serious discussion, so it was good. It was real good.
Very well.
It's kind of like a race. I may go out one time and back up 100 miles an hour, and the next time I may come back like Granny. You never know.
Yeah, that doesn't happen much.
All right, well, plug everything Bullseye related, so everybody knows how to get in touch with you and what you can do for them.
Okay. Yeah, the phone number is 231-788-5209. Anybody that answers the phone there can help you. You don't have to talk to me. I don't care if you do. I don't mind. It's what I live for. It's my passion. The website is www.bullseyepower.com. You can find us on Facebook. It's Bullseye Power Turbochargers. And if you send an email or you call and everybody's busy and leave a message, you will get a call back and you'll get a return email. If you do not get a return email, we didn't get it.
Gotcha.
So try again.
Fair enough.
Fantastic. Bill, thank you as always. I appreciate all the help, and we'll be in touch as soon as things get a little further underway. Tom actually got some connecting rods. We're moving forward, so we're getting there little by little.
That's awesome, dude.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Bill.
I'll call you, man.
Really looking forward to this. It's going to be good, man.
I'm sure it will.
It's going to rock.
All righty. Thanks, Bill.
I won't disappoint you. All right, guys.
See you.
Thanks.
See you, man.
Bye-bye.
I can't ever frame my questions. Because I don't have enough understanding.
No, you were okay.
No, but I mean, I know what I wanted to ask, like specifically about the sizing stuff, because to me, if you're on either side of exactly where you think you should be.
Yeah.
There has to be effects if you're on either side of that ideal point. Like whether it be turbo control. Like, look, I was looking at this from, all right, we're going to leave at, say, 5 pounds. Just drive away. How nicely can they ramp in? How easy is it to control to get them to ramp in? That's...
Yeah, and that's all based not even on the turbo. That's all based on the management, and the gates.
While I understand that, but then you get into things here like, let me just use this. Take the example of a throttle body. I remember somebody telling me that, you can't put that big throttle body on because it's no good. And I was like, why is it no good? Oh, it have no bottom end. Well, that doesn't happen because the air is going in. It doesn't know if it's at zero vacuum because it's got a single 90 or a single 25. If the manifold is zero, it's zero. But what does happen is a little bit of angular movement in the throttle body. What went from I'm idling to I'm making 400 horsepower.
Right, based on the size.
Exactly.
So you got the tuning window is different.
So now on the wastegates, if you're trying to gently and smoothly control the power, I guess that's all up to wastegate guys. The diameter and all right. Okay.
And listen, dude, it's done with way more power than we're going to have. We're going to be dealing with, it's going to be pretty easy. We're not even going to have to look at the pre-volute size. We're just going to...
Volute? Somebody said the Volute is available in Ohio for a license plate.
Okay. Well, that's great. You dicks.
I can't even take credit for pre-volute, but one of our guys wrote it.
But I want to point out, I brought that up, and I believe either you or you made fun of me. That you're like, is that even a word?
Nobody made fun of you.
One of you fucking idiots.
We made fun of you because it just sounded funny. You said volute. Sounds like something a Canadian moose hunter would say.
All right.
Hey?
A moose call? Volute?
Yeah, something.
Well, a couple of housekeeping issues.
Quit being so thin-skinned.
Shut up. We are changing some hosting stuff. There's apparently somebody, I can't remember his name, who's bitching about that
Jimmy Volute.
That episode 92 isn't up. Yeah, we know. Asking doesn't help. If I'm sorry if your world is hanging on this episode getting published. There's been
that was a FUD episode, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Not only that, it was me and Alan and Dipshit and Tad. I mean, I can't imagine.
Whoa. It was you and Tad and Dipshit.
Yeah.
Is what you meant to say.
Sorry to correct you, but
me and twin dipshits? Is that better?
No. It was you, Tad, and super dipshit.
On the counterclockwise one, so.
I don't think that there was anything.
All right, it was you and the two dipshits.
Yes. I don't think there's anything spectacular lost there right now. We know they're stuck. And
can you get it in a WAV file and send it to that guy?
I probably should. Just send him an MP3 and say, here, beat it.
Yeah.
We're going to probably on Wednesday was when some of these changes will take place. And hopefully it'll make publishing a little bit easier. And there won't be this problem.
Good.
Because I don't listen. I don't go back and listen to our own thing. So if it doesn't make it, I don't know it. I don't check Facebook, just because they don't. If you're trying to get in touch with me, don't use that. And
I normally tell you what.
Yeah, Tad usually tells me, "Hey, look, it made it or it didn't make it."
Yeah,
and it's but I'm going to try to get this one and the other one published Tuesday. If not, it'll definitely be Wednesday because that's when everything should work.
Yep,
for sure.
Okay,
so that's where we are on that.
Good.
For all the haters out there,
it's only one or two.
Well, I kind of understand it, but trust me, it ain't like you found the missing episode of the Honeymooners or some shit. I mean, it's not, it's
hey.
Well, with FUD, maybe.
Some people think it is.
All right. Well, anything else? Now, you got, real quick.
Yeah.
You got connecting rods.
Yeah.
They're I-beams.
Yeah, they're good ones.
And you're sure we're okay with that?
They like Jeff's or no?
Yeah. Huh?
Jeff. Esther.
No, they're straight.
Okay. Not wonky?
Yeah, no, it's the way to go.
Okay.
Yeah. They're good.
Non-wonky.
We got to start making some decisions about compression ratio now because we got to start making pistons.
Mm-hmm.
And
now, did you look into forging characteristics? Like, what are? I mean, look, we know.
Did you smoke crack today?
No.
Okay.
Why?
That was just a crazy question.
Well, why was it a crazy question? Forging characteristics, like what you have for forgings available based on bore size? Because when I asked you about it, you dick, you said, I don't know if we have a forging that'll go down that far.
Oh, God, that was eons ago.
So, yes. Did you look into?
Of course. I told you we did. We have tons of them. It's probably going to be a sport compact forging.
Okay.
You even said that last week. I know you're just trying to pile on me because you had a bad day.
No. I'm not trying to pile on you. Right. But I remember at one point when we talked about this, it was which forging it would go on and if it would work. Mm-hmm. We had a couple different options. But all right,
we're good.
And I want to point out that even as of last week, you were like, well, we really should make it bigger bore until we had a longer conversation about it. So I didn't know that the bore size was ever figured out.
No, I wanted to make it bigger bore just because of unshrouding the valve, which we talked about.
Right.
You want to keep the structural integrity of the block at its maximum. Mm-hmm. And I don't care. It's fine. That's a sound reason.
Okay. So this is what pistons are around 3,800?
Oh, tons.
Tons?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We can even get the LS stuff down that far, and it'll have a thick skirt.
Oh, your LS pistons have that much? Skirt. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we can.
Everything got an internal mill?
Yeah. Well, and I looked into it a while ago. I think we can go that, but regardless, we can get there.
Okay. All right, so we got that. Well, the compression side of things, I'm going to state it right now, 9 to 1.
9 to 1, yeah.
I want this thing to be comfortable.
Yep.
No matter what. I would, and like Bill said, I personally agree with the thought. I'd rather fill a larger space. I think everything about, and I can't imagine. Look, if it's 360 inches, that's what I got to do. I got to plug the little calculator. If it was 360 inches, I can't imagine that it's ever going to be doggy. It might be doggy in comparison to not being under boost, but everything would be.
No, I think it's going to be pretty good.
I think it'll drive just fine. Mm-hmm. I've kind of made a decision on camshaft.
And even at a boost, a 360 LS, even with a cathedral port head, will be pretty good. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be a disaster. It done right. It'll make 500.
Did you ask anybody about the head porting question I had?
No.
Okay.
I will.
That's one I'm just curious about. To see, because I don't want to affect it horribly driving around, but if there's more to be gained there, I'd like to try to get that. Okay. Just a quick mic recommendation. Forever, once the iPhone came out, all the stupid little things you would end up doing on a calculator, they have so many neat little apps. They have a little deal. I think it was by Trinity Software. I'm looking at it now, but it's just called Engine Calc. And it's got a picture of like an engine and a little graphic of an engine. It's got every little stupid calculation that you want to know right there. It's nice. I think it was cheap. I think it was like $2. Mm-hmm. Good deal. So just another little thing that Mike says that works. Oh, Tad?
Yes.
Just don't answer. Do you know what a Zerk is? Just say yes or no.
Yes.
Tom, do you know what a Zerk is?
Yeah.
The kid at the auto parts store. No idea. I said,
did he ask you your VIN number?
Yeah, right.
It's a 2-door or 4-door.
I went in there. I had to put a grease fitting, a Zerk, and I've always called them Zerks because it's funny. Yeah. So I go in there. I said, "You guys got like a box of Zerk fittings?" What? I said, "Zerk." The kid actually argued me that I made it up. So I made it a point. I want to tell everybody that Oscar U. Zerk in 1929 patented the Zerk fitting. There's your fucking audio of the day.
I like it.
I don't know why my compressor's not knocking us down. That's fantastic.
I like it loud.
Well, it was loud, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the compressor's just not working. Whatever.
Oh, you got to get a new board then, right?
I'm looking at it. What we're going to say. All right, well, we'll be back Monday next week, and hopefully Tom has a guest.
Yep.
All right, see you, everybody.
Night.
Later.